and welcome to Food 101. People. Let's talk about food. And today I have my special guest. He is an inventor in food products and many more. No other than Mr. John Huff.
Nice to be here.
Welcome, Mr. John. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Sure. I have an interesting background. I'm essentially an inventor, and I grew up in a family that was obsessed with food. In the South, I was cooking when I was 5. My parents were TV cooks. My aunt had a very famous restaurant, one of the biggest restaurants in Atlanta. I can talk about that later if you want to hear. But as I ended up in my 20s, I went to San Francisco and then I got into natural food. And I had a girlfriend who had a famous restaurant there, the Good Karma Cafe. So I learned about cooking and organic food. So I went this whole, journey from Southern food and catching fish and making hush puppies and cornbread to organic food. And then I created a natural food company, which was love natural foods. We made a veggie burger. We had an energy bar with no sugar. So there's a lot to talk about here.
There's a lot of things to talk about for sure. And Mr. John, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world.
My pleasure.
Yes, so Mr. John, tell us what is your favorite food?
Well, I tend to be organic, and I'm not a vegetarian, but I do like to sprout everything. So when I cook at home, I cook sort of according to Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine, which means that I'll eat beans, grains, and I'll sprout the beans and I'll sprout the grains, but just ever so slightly, because some people know that a lot of food is trying to kill us, and we need to get rid of the innate toxins that permeate our food, even if we're eating well. And one way to do that is to very slightly sprout food. So anything you're making that's beans or grains, of course, whole grains are better and whole beans are better. But if you soak them for a day and then even 8 hours of sprouting, you get rid of the lectins and a lot of the toxins that are in foods, and it makes it more digestible and healthier.
Well, thank you for that sharing. Thank you for sharing your favorite food, Mr. John. And which of the five senses is the most powerfully activated when you eat this food? Is it the smell, the texture, the sizzle, or the visual appeal?
I think it's the taste for me. I mean, the smell and the taste are interwoven, but I think the taste of food, because I've paid enough attention to eating now, and because I eat clean and I live a healthy lifestyle, when I eat food, I can tell immediately what it's doing to my body. Some people maybe it takes them a day or two to find out if something made them sick, but for me, just within that first few bites of food, because of the way I live, I can tell if my body likes it or not and how it's going to make me feel. And so that's the most critical thing to me.
Critical indeed. Is your favorite a fancy gourmet dish or is it a simple, humble comfort food? And what does choice say about you?
Well, I think I'm in the middle between that. I want the food to be healthy, but it needs to taste and look nice too, because that's part of the experience. If your food doesn't look appealing, you're probably not going to enjoy it. So I uh, I focus on the whole mix of things in that regard.
Mr. John, describe a specific time you had irresistible craving for this food and what is happening in your life that made you need it.
Well, Um, I would say when I was young, uh, I grew up in the cooking that tends to go on in the South was not well suited to me. It was a bit too heavy. And so I would eat, traditional food that Southerners eat. And I mean, there were a lot of fresh vegetables and good salads, but still it was kind of greasy, and a lot of fried food. And when I escaped from the South and ended up in San Francisco, I had my eyes open because people there uh, didn't eat quite as heavy or greasy food as we ate in the South. And all of a sudden, I started to feel better. And I went, oh, this is interesting. I thought maybe as a child, I just had a weak digestive system, but that turned out not to be the case. I just didn't have access to the good food that I started to learn about when I moved out west.
Mr. John, on memory and nostalgia, do you remember the very first time you tried this food? Was there, or what was the circumstance, and what is your initial reaction?
Uh, the first big change I think came. My significant other, my girlfriend, had a restaurant in San Francisco, and it was a big place, and it was kind of a who's who of everyone in San Francisco at the time, and it was all macrobiotic food, which I didn't know much about. But the very first meal I had there really opened my eyes because it was prepared with so much love, but attention to these details, like I'm mentioned earlier, where you slightly sprout the food and you don't overcook the food, but you have interesting spices, Ayurvedic spices, Chinese spices, all of these spices that make the food uh, better to digest and also make it much more appealing taste wise.
Hmm, taste wise, for sure. And if this food was a time capsule, which specific memory or period of your life does it instantly transport you back to?
Yes, it does. It transport me, uh, to the early '70s when I really first started learning about this. It just awakens a cellular memory in me that's very profound and makes me feel happy to be alive.
Hmm. What a food! What a food, Mr. John. Is this a food that's tied up your family heritage or a specific family member who thought you to be to make it or appreciate it?
Well, my mom taught me to cook, and she was a good cook. And I think I mentioned I was cooking when I was 5. They had me always fix breakfast, and then as I got older, because there were a lot of kids in our family, there was a lot of cooking to be done. So she taught me the basics of food preparation. But uh, when I got older and I really started exploring the chemistry of food, which is very important, I started to learn more than I learned from my cultural heritage, and learning that chemistry of food, which, the Chinese and the people in India, they really know about food chemistry. They've explored how, for instance, you have in India, you have the 5 tastes. That's in Ayurveda. Every meal is supposed to have sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and pungent. And in Chinese, they have all of those plus, they have mani, they have this other, is relative to sort of sour and bitter, but it's its own unique taste. And you find a lot of that in Japanese food, especially in Chinese food. So those tastes make you more interested in the food. They awaken your digestion, your taste buds, and they make you just appreciate the food more when you eat according to these principles.
Yes. For sure, Miss John. Oh, mommy, indeed. And in what way does this food operate as a source of comfort or from a edible therapy for you?
Well, when your stomach feels good, you feel good overall. So when you eat food that sits well in your stomach, you're naturally going to feel good. You're going to be less stressed out. You're going to be happier. Improves your mental health. It improves your physical health. So, uh, you know, it's a tendency in America to try to eat in a hurry and eat fast food, but that doesn't make you feel good. It gets the job done in a hurry, but then you don't feel satisfied because your body knows that you didn't really have something that it wanted. It feels full, but it senses that there's something lacking if you just eat fast food all the time. And so we need to return to the way our ancestors ate, which is how I try to eat. I look at history, like how did people eat 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago? Because that type of living and eating is what got us here. And I think for me, when I return to that way of eating and living, I feel better.
Yes, for sure. Eat better. No salt at all. No sugar.
Yeah, no sugar, especially. Sugar
Mm,
is really bad. And we're all addicted to sugar because it makes us feel good. And on the note of thinking of history, see, our relatives 1,000 years ago did not have any sugar. Even the fruit that we think of now as fruit was nothing like fruit today. It was very bitter. Our food now is moved way in the direction of sweet, but historically, food was bitter. I mean, we ate bitter greens, dandelion greens, and the fruit. The bananas were these tiny little things, and apples were nothing like they are now. The apples our ancestors ate 1,000 years ago were more sour than crab apples that we eat today. And the only thing really back then you could eat sweet was briefly in the summer. Some of the fruit was sort of sweet, and then you could get honey. But that was a risky thing because the bees do not appreciate that. So basically, we never ate sugar until the last 100 years.
yes. Only sugar is for the fruits that we are eating. And Mr. John, as an aficionado of this dish, what is a common mistake amateurs or restaurants make when preparing of it?
I think the first mistake, they don't source high quality ingredients because you can never make great food if you don't use the best raw materials. I mean, you can't just go into the grocery store and buy some old string beans or some old squash or anything. You have to really, I shop, organically, and that food tends to be better, less pesticides, healthier for you. But I'm picky too. I mean, I don't just walk down the aisle and grab the first zucchini I see. I'll pick them up and I'll look at them. Sometimes I even smell them, because you get a lot of feedback when you really pay attention to your food and you're not just in a super hurry trying to pick out something for your next meal.
Yes, definitely. And beyond the literal recipe, what is the intangible secret ingredients that takes it from good to sublime?
I think it's love. We know that love is a fundamental factor in human life, growth, happiness. I mean, you can't be happy without love. And if you cook your food with love, and if you eat food that was prepared with love, even though you may think it doesn't make a difference, I say no, it makes a huge difference. And I experience that when I eat food that someone prepared who really cared about the food. I feel that intangible energy, just like you said.
Mm, yes, definitely. Very well said, Mr. John. I like it. Empowering answer. Truly, truly, love is one of the ingredients in while preparing food to make it more delicious. And what is the absolute best beverage, whether it's a wine, beer, or cocktail, or even a specific soda to pair with this food to elevate the experience?
Well, I don't drink a lot of alcohol, but when I drink a modest amount, it'll either be wine or I particularly, if I'm going to drink alcohol, like tequila. I find that tequila has a more enlivening energy to it. And like I say, I'm not going to drink a lot of it, but a little bit of tequila does create an awakening sensation that you don't get from a lot of other spirits.
Yes, for sure. And Mr. John, have you ever gone on a dedicated quest to find the best version of this food in the world? And what did you learn?
Oh, I do that all the time. That's half of my life, finding the good food. And I traveled overseas a lot. So I lived in India, and I lived in Africa. I lived in uh, England and Norway, and I learned how all these different cultures eat. And it's amazing how different these cultures eat. Like in Norway, no one can eat spices. They did not uh, grow up as a culture having spicy food. So if you give a Norwegian a little bit of spicy food, they just react very badly. And on the other hand, in India, if you give them bland food, uh, they hate it. They need that spice. They grew up and their bodies acclimated to eating a certain way. So when I would travel to these places, I would seek out the food that the local people ate, and then I would try it to see how it affected me. And it was very illuminating.
Illuminating indeed. And if it's the food represent a certain culture or region, how has your love for the depend your understanding of the place and its people?
Well, I'm kind of partial to Indian food. Um, I found that it suits me pretty well. Not that I can eat the heaviest spices they eat, but when I eat Indian food, I find that their food is balanced in a way because they've learned over 10,000 years how to make a food that has everything you need. Similar for the Chinese too. Their culture goes back so long, and both of those cultures have sort of a fixed plate of food. You can look at it and you can see they have a small amount of grain. They usually have a legume or a bean of some kind, and then they have a little bit of protein. If it's going to be meat, in India, it'll be in India, they don't eat beef, so they'll eat lamb or they'll eat some wild food, maybe venison if they can get it, or even buffalo. And in China, uh, they're partial to pork, which is not my favorite, but they have chicken and they have other meat foods that they eat. But also in southern India, they don't eat meat at all. So they just depend on their grain and their beans. But then all of those cultures have a large portion of some kind of vegetable that is grown locally. And in Japan and in China, they'll supplement with seaweed because a lot of people don't know this, but seaweed has 10 times more minerals than land vegetables. And in our modern society, in America particularly, we've kind of started to wear the soil out and there are not minerals. But if you can start eating a little bit of seaweed in your diet, you'll find that you're getting these minerals without having to take vitamins, and your health, you really appreciate that. So it's takes a while to get used to seaweed, and there are different kinds that you can eat that are more palatable to most people. I tell people if they want to start with seaweed to get dulse. It's innocuous. It doesn't have a strong taste, and but it's got a lot of benefits. And of course, sushi. There's always seaweed with sushi, and that's another seaweed that you can start eating in small amounts. And most Americans by now have had sushi, and so they know about that. But maybe they don't realize why sushi always has the seaweed. It's because they want to get their minerals.
Yes, for sure, the mineral itself. And Mr. John, if your favorite food reflected your personality, what would it say about you? Is it complex and layered or simple and reliable, spicy and adventurous?
I think it's layered because, like I say, you want to try to get all of the tastes in your meal. Like in India, you would never, like a good chef in India would never just have a sweet meal and a salty meal. They make sure there's some amount of spice, there's some amount of bitter, there's some amount of sour. They include all the taste because in order to really appreciate your food and get the most out of it, your body wants to have all of those tastes in every meal.
In every meal, indeed. If you had to choose a last meal, would this be it, or why does it hold the level of significance?
Hmm, that's a good question. I've never thought about that. But I think if I had to choose the last meal, it would just be a well balanced meal. I wouldn't eat too much because that's another mistake that is easy to do. But if you were about to transition into the great beyond, you would want to have some clarity. So I would have a modest meal, and I would not have any alcohol because I would want to be clear when I made my final exit from this planet. But I would have, like I say at the beginning, I would have some slightly sprouted grains and beans and a generous helping of vegetables, and I would probably have a little bit of maybe lamb or venison, some kind of meat, but not too much of it, so I could retain my clarity. And I would feel so good after I did that that I would be ready for anything.
If you were stranded on a desert island and could only eat this one food forever, would you still love it, or would you grow to hate it?
I think I would grow to hate it eventually. I don't know if people
Who
saw
knows?
Castaway with Tom Hanks, but he was on an island and all he had was coconuts. And
Coconut, yes.
coconuts will sustain you. They have everything you need. The water in coconuts is almost the same as blood plasma. Like in World War II, when fighters were shot and injured and they had no blood, they would literally give them coconut water, and that would keep them alive. So eating coconuts uh, can keep you alive because it's got protein, it's got oil, it's got the things you need to rebuild blood. But it would be so boring that after a few months of just eating coconuts, you would probably hate coconuts, even though they would keep you alive.
Definitely. Totally agree with you, Mr. John. And if this food is preferred to enjoy alone, savoring every bite, or its primary purpose to be shared with others?
Which purpose of the food would I share with others?
Yes.
Well, I think a lot of people depend on presentation and they depend on maybe the smell more than I do. But if I'm cooking for other people, I make sure I pay extra attention to those things because, see, me, when I eat a food, the taste and the feeling as it's going down in my stomach tell me everything I need to know, even though, of course, I want it to look and smell nice. But other people, maybe because they haven't explored food and other cultures as deeply as I have, for other people, you really need to make the food look nice and smell nice. And that first bite has to taste really good. So that's kind of important if you're cooking for other people.
Mm, truly, truly important. And Mr. John, if you had $1 million to spend in one single serving of this food, how would you spend the money to create the most extravagant version imaginable?
Wow, that is a great question. In ancient India and also China, they had very exotic herbs, and in Chinese cooking, particularly, uh, herbs that we would think maybe you would just make tea of, they would put in the food. So you might make a boiling pot of soup, but it would have ginseng root in it. It would have faux tea. It would have herbs that most Americans have never had. And some of those herbs are very expensive. I mean, you can pay $10,000 for a ginseng root. I used to, when I had my natural food company back
Mm-hmm.
in the 70s, we made the first energy bar that had no sugar and it had 2 grams of very high quality red ginseng in it. Before we did that, if you wanted to have ginseng, which most Americans didn't even know about, you either chewed the root or you made tea out of it. And our thought was, well, what if we could just put ginseng root in the food, which is how the ancient Chinese used to take their herbs. So we made this bar with ginseng root, and it was very, very popular. If my business partner had been a better business person, I would have retired on that one venture, because even to this day, there's still no energy bar as good as the Nazar bar. That was the name of it. And we made a thing called Love Burger too, which was a mix, a vegetarian burger mix that you could eat that was very healthy. But yeah, if I had that $1 million to spend on food, it would be chock full of these herbs that are rare and expensive, but it would also have these other things I mentioned before. You know, a little bit of the grains and a little bit of the legumes, and definitely a lot of vegetables. Uh, and because you can spend so much on these herbs, like another herb that is amazing is cordyceps, and people will spend $10 or $20,000 for just a small amount of cordyceps, which is grown way up in the high mountains in Bhutan and Nepal and places like that. It's a fascinating story. Most people don't even necessarily know what cordyceps is, but that would definitely be in my $1 million meal.
Yes, indeed. Mr. John, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in first season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101 Love Letters in its third season, and my movie 101 review and music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So Mr. John, if you could only be remembered for one recipe, would it be this, or what do you hope people feel when they taste it?
Well, I'm going to go a little bit off topic. I'm going to talk about one of my other inventions, the floating bed. You can see pictures here behind me, and of course, you can see my website. It's floatingbed.com. But in my journey to better health, I really found that in order to feel good all the time, you need to do some things for your health. And one of the things I discovered that the way mothers rock babies historically all through time makes you healthier, because it increases your circulation. And when you can increase your circulation, that means your body is taking out the toxins from everything you ate and all the stress you did all day and getting rid of it faster. And this bed I invented not only helps you be healthier, but when you're more clear, it gives you a greater appreciation of health. And as you pointed in your other podcast about science and about mental health, this bed was designed by science, because I am a true scientist. I'm a food scientist and health scientist. And when I started learning about other things that we can do to be healthy, and I realized that we don't get enough motion in our life, I created this bed, which is the one thing that I will be remembered by and for, because many people are starting to find out about this bed now. I've got a lot of celebrity customers who are sleeping this way, and I encourage anyone who can to go to the website. It's floatingbed.com.
Yes, people, floatingbed.com. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, Mr. John. And can you please invite our listeners to support your floating bed?
Yeah, check out the floating bed. You'll be glad you did. Everybody loves gentle rocking. Every person was rocked as a baby. And when you feel that, you'll just go back to that wonderful feeling.
Yes, sleep like a baby through the floating bed. So, Mr. John, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. It was an honor meeting you.
Much people, see you soon.